This is the Fourth Part Podcast, a podcast made by Freemasons to be enjoyed by all. The opinions of the hosts and the guests are their own, and do not reflect any Grand Lodge stance or opinion. And now here are your hosts, the grumpiest past master, and the OG Danielson. Welcome back to the Fourth Part Podcast. I'm your host, the grumpiest past master, and I also have my co-host,
the OG Danielson,
and a special guest, Brother Jimmy.
That's it.
It's very cryptic and mysterious. Would you work today? Did you end up working today?
No, thank God. Spent time with the son.
Oh, good. That's great.
not Danielson.
No, not Danielson.
His son. Somebody told me the other day, before you could be a Mr. Miyagi, you gotta be a Danielson. And I felt attacked.
So, you have been fairly recently raised.
Yes.
To Master Mason. How are you enjoying it so far? Even though I know Danny's in the East and he's fucking everything up, and you know what?
I thought it was a good degree, to be honest with you.
It was a very good degree. I'm just breaking your balls. It was very good.
No, it's been good. The unfortunate part is, since I've been raised, I've been traveling for work.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't been back since November.
Have you visited any lodges?
So I found out last minute when I was in Ohio, and I had reached out to you because I was out to dinner with one of the teachers, and he was like, "Oh, I got to go to the lodge later." I was like, "Oh, what lodge?" He's like, "Oh, I'm a Mason." I was like, "Oh, very nice." He's like, "Yeah, we have a first degree tonight." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "I'm a Mason as well." And he's like, "Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Sure." And he's like, "Do you have your card?" And I was like, "No, I don't have my card." So then I talked to you.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, I got back from Ohio. What was in my mailbox?
Your card.
My card.
Well, he could have told you. He could have called me. The lodge secretary could have called me.
Properly vouched for.
Yeah, I could have gave him tons of information that would have covered that. You know,
it was just so last minute. He was leaving to go to the first degree.
Yeah.
So I was just like, you know what, let him go do his thing.
I'm surprised that they wouldn't. They would try you in other ways. I guess I guess we could ask that as a question. Like, we can kind of talk about it just a smidge. Like, there are other ways that, you know, besides our card that we can check. You know, do you feel, without getting into too many specifics, do you feel that we have taught you enough working knowledge, Freemasonry, to be able to do it without an actual credential?
Yes.
Indulge in Masonic intercourse, I believe, is what you're alluding to.
Yes. So there are certain ways you can recognize a Mason and verify someone is a Mason without
from a recognized,
just being like, "Hey, here's my official Grand Lodge dues card."
Yeah.
You know, like, what if somebody doesn't have it? Like, them saying, and I don't blame him, because he doesn't really know you from a hole in the wall. But
yeah,
you know, there should be other ways. I mean, there is other ways they can check without saying, "Well, you don't have your dues card." So, you know, besides actually calling me, this lodge secretary, you know, that they could check to see if you're a Mason.
Now,
you know, and satisfy them enough. You know, there's always, you know, what if the guy got thrown out and he just knows all that stuff, you know?
Yeah.
But, you know, at some point you have to have a little faith in the person too, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, you should have your credentials there. I think if you're a newer member and you don't have those credentials, you should reach out to your worshipful master or the secretary, and in advance he would reach out to that lodge and letter. But because, like you said, there's been guys who have been thrown out of Masonry for whatever reason, and you just don't get thrown out of Masonry. There is process and procedures that follow that whole situation. But I think, in short, that you should have those documents, and if not, then I don't think you should be traveling without letting your lodge know. You know, but you did the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question about, do I feel like they've taught me enough to be tried? I would say if you tried me as a fellow craft, I'd be a lot more comfortable, just because I only went through the raising and then really haven't been a part of any other third degree meetings. So I haven't had to use those
Right. You haven't really had a chance to,
Yeah.
you know. Have you had a situation where you've ran into somebody new on the street and you found out they were a Mason like that? Like, besides just telling them if you were a Mason, did you find that he was? Some people are easy.
So there was a brother.
They have a ring or whatever, you know. Have you run into the situation? And I love the situation where you're like, I think this guy's a Mason, but I don't know. Like, wait till you have that one time where it's like you're not like you. This guy that you had an interaction. Who was he again? He was.
So I was out in Ohio for a training.
Right, and he was one of the
he
teachers.
Was one of the instructors.
Okay, so you had like a reason to be just like casually talking to this guy.
Yeah, we were all out to
right.
dinner.
I've had it happen to me so many times where you're just like, man, there's this guy here that I'm like 99% sure he's a Mason, but like I have no reason to go talk to him, and I feel like a lot of brothers miss out on meeting a new brother because they're just like, oh, it's weird.
Which
like,
is really the beauty in the fraternity.
Like, talk to like this guy, this random dude, like, you know, what is it a way, and we won't say him on here, like what are ways that we can kind of like show each other that we're a Mason, or kind of poke and see if we are, and see if you get a reaction.
Yeah, prod a little to see.
Yeah, like that's one of the questions I've gotten quite a bit from newer brothers, or you know, brothers that are just maybe just coming back into the fraternity. They're like, you know, I don't know what to say, what to do. Like, how do I spark that conversation without it being weird, or without it like drawing too much attention from other people? You know,
what about the the guys? And I advise all brothers to not do this.
Disclaimer alert:
right.
Do not
if you
do what Danny's about to tell you to do.
If you see a car with an emblem, do not start throwing that guy signs. Because he could have just bought that car from a Mason.
It's a good point.
You might be threatening this brother. He might receive that in a threatening manner, which could result in a road rage encounter. So tread lightly. Tread lightly.
No, the only encounter I've had like that so far has actually been, it was before my 3rd degree. I was actually talking to my mother's neighbor, and he saw my hat, and he was like, "Oh, you're a Mason?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Where at?" I'm like, "Babylon." He's like, "Oh, I was too." So he actually came back to the ceremony for my 3rd degree.
Okay.
So he was there that night.
Mike.
Who? Mike
Huds.
Oh, yeah.
Starts with an H.
Hunziker.
Yeah. So he was my mother's next door neighbor, and I never knew he was a Mason until he saw my hat. And
we hadn't seen Mike. We hadn't seen Mike in years. He's just busy. He works a lot.
Yeah.
We haven't seen him in years. You know.
Yeah, he's got a weird shift.
Right. Well, he's an electrician. He works like 1 million hours.
Yeah.
You know.
But so now he like runs the electrical department for the airport.
Oh, okay.
And he works like nights now.
He does the lights on the runway.
Yeah.
Does he really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. What, for what, Islip?
No, he's in the city, JFK, I think.
Oh, jeez.
So actually,
there's like no lights there.
And now he's doing something with the Port Authority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, okay. So that's a good segue into asking. You know, brothers who have been away for a while, have they? You know, they sometimes they feel like, oh, I don't know if I can. It's been too long to come back. You know, it's good to see brothers that have been away for a while that come back and can actually just come right back into the fold, and everything's cool. And you know, I encourage brothers that have been away that you know, the point of Masonry is that you can go away for a little while. You can take care of your life. You can take care of your work, and we're supposed to still be here and be unchanged. Yeah, you may see some new faces here and there, but you know, it should be pretty time immemorial. It should be just stuck. You know, like you come right back and you get right back into it, and no one judges you or says boo about it. You know,
that's one of the beautiful. I think that's a gift and a curse in Masonry, because I see brothers that belong to different fraternities or different organizations, even some churches, and I don't want to say they get harassed, but hey, you haven't been around in a long time. What's going on? And I could say for our lodge, we don't really put that pressure on brothers. You come around when you have time for us. Take care, square away what you got going on, because we want the best version of you here. We don't want you stressed. We don't want you to feel obligated to come to lodge. We welcome you. We want to help in any way, shape, or form, but at the same time, too, it shouldn't be a burden.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it alludes to the working tools as well. Go into the day with a plan. But again, do not stress your family out. Work shouldn't be shorted because you came to lodge the night before and you're too tired to wake up. But we're always here with open arms, welcoming any brother that's been away from the craft long enough. And again, that's our lodge. Other lodges might be different.
I think it's like a human nature thing, though. It's not just for brothers. Like, when you're away from almost anything and then you want to go back, a lot of people feel that awkwardness. So I don't think it's just something that's necessarily, correlates just to brothers and being away.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing as going up to a brother that you have somebody you think is a brother and you have no clue. It's the same thing as approaching a woman in public. Some people just have that anxiety about it.
Is it anxiety or excitement? They're close cousins.
They are. But I think anxiety is more fear-based. More than excitement.
The unknown of the outcome.
Yeah.
Not knowing the future problem solving, how the thing is going to go, how the encounter is going to go. Is this guy going to ask me something that I don't know in regards to masonry? And, who knows? There's a lot of clandestine orders out there.
Well, that's the other thing. So that's a fair question. Like, how well versed are clandestine Masons in our teachings, so that if we went to try a clandestine Mason, how can we?
I mean, anybody who I've encountered that's been from a clandestine lodge, and when I say clandestine,
it's been pretty blatantly obvious.
Yeah,
when
but
when they are clandestine.
What is clandestine? Give us the definition of clandestine.
So it's a not regular lodge, meaning it's a non-recognized. Being a part of a lodge of a non-recognized Grand Lodge, meaning Prince Hall or, which is mainstream craft masonry. So the way masonry works when it comes to whether a lodge is regular or not is it's kind of got its own system of checks and balances. There is no Grand Lodge of the world. Every Grand Lodge was created by another Grand Lodge all the way back to either whether it's Scotland, England, or France. In some cases, everybody can trace their lineage back to that.
And it's almost like they follow a curriculum.
Right. And, well, that's getting to that. So that's how other lodges kind of check each other. So if any lodge or Grand Lodge starts to stray from the ancient teachings of Masonry, the ancient landmarks of Masonry, the other Grand Lodges will not be in what's considered amity with them. They'll actually publish and say, we do not recognize this Grand Lodge and all lodges underneath it as regular Masons. They are not teaching what they're supposed to be teaching. So we kind of self-check ourselves there. That's how we don't need a Grand Lodge of like the world. We do it by checking each other. Because if one Grand Lodge, or even if one lodge, one specific lodge gets out of line, you would hope the Grand Lodge would just be like, your charter's gone, but you can't pull a Grand Lodge's charter. Like, there's nobody to pull a Grand Lodge's charter. So how does a Grand Lodge get checked, right?
Yeah.
All right, so again, I probably should have explained this for people who are not Masons. Every Masonic jurisdiction is just a jurisdiction's an area defined by usually the country kind of defines
Typically states.
In the United States, it's by state. In Canada, and I think it's by province. They do it by province. But I'm sure there's parts of the world that can be, that they split them up however they want to split them up. I don't know how it is in England off the top of my head. Yeah, they create their jurisdictions. In the United States, it happens to be this by state. So the Grand Lodge of New York is in charge of all lodges within the state of New York. And the Grand Lodge of New York received its charter from the Grand Lodge of England. The Grand Lodge of New York has chartered other states' Grand Lodges in the United States. So we have created other Grand Lodges within the United States, but a regular lodge because you can trace that lineage from them to New York to England, the Grand Lodge of England. Now, within a jurisdiction, say New York, because we're in New York, you have all your lodges. All the lodges get their charter, which is a piece of paper which allows them to act as a Masonic lodge. They get their charter from the Grand Lodge of New York. If a lodge gets out of line, meaning they're breaking Masonic law, yes, there's Masonic law, and whatever the rules are of the fraternity, the Grand Lodge can pull the charter, revoking their status as a Masonic lodge. Now, the charter of the Grand Lodge of New York cannot be revoked by anyone, okay? But the check to that is every Grand Lodge, there's a book in Grand Lodge, which the secretaries can get, of every other recognized Grand Lodge in the world. So if some Grand Lodge has got lodges that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing and they don't pull their charters, and they're allowing them to say, like that show, like the movie we were talking about with the paddling, like let's say lodges start doing that, and the Grand Lodge, let's say it happens, hypothetically happens in New York, and the Grand Lodge in New York doesn't step in and pull those charters of those lodges and allows it to happen, all the other Grand Lodges around the world are going to go, that's not what Masonry is supposed to be doing. We do not recognize you as a regular lodge, Grand Lodge.
You're not part of our crew.
Right. What does that mean? What is the ramifications of that? Everybody who's a Mason of that Grand Lodge can no longer visit or have what's called Masonic intercourse, meaning talking about ritual and stuff like that with another Mason anywhere in the world. You're not welcome to go into any lodge room, nothing. You can't attend meetings. And that's the check to those Grand Lodges, is being in what's called amity with each other. So it's important.
Yeah.
But clandestine lodges, to get to that, after all that huge explanation, clandestine lodges are part of Grand Lodges that are not recognized by basically every other Grand Lodge.
So they're not in amity.
World. They are not in amity with us.
Not even part of a Grand Lodge.
Right. They just make up some wackadoo, like, like name for their organization. Okay. Yeah. The problem lies in that the square and compass is not a trademarked thing. So it's a free sourced, which I'm surprised it's not trademarkable.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. I don't see why it wouldn't be trademarkable.
Because the problem is because there's no unified structure. Yeah. If there was a Grand Lodge of the world, they could probably trademark it. Because right now, who would own it?
Whoever forms the trademark.
Right. So I think there was an argument that this is such an old symbol. I'd have to look it up. I had found it once because I was curious. There was a court case where somebody was sued for using it by a Grand Lodge, and the court found that it was such a universally used symbol that it wasn't trademarkable. Like, you couldn't say...
It's not your logo that you created.
No one owns it. It's been around forever, so you can't own it.
But it's also not...
It's like saying I own the triangle. Like, I own this symbol. You can't trademark it. I'm trademarking a circle.
Yeah.
You can't do it, Or the letter T. The letter T is mine. Every time you use the letter T, you owe Matt money. That's what they kind of got at, which is kind of cool if you think about it.
Yeah.
Right? Because now they're saying, hey, the square and compass is such an ancient thing. Nobody owns it. It's just there.
Nobody living
pretty
could
cool.
lay claim to it.
Right, but think about how old it's got to be. It's as old as a basic symbol of society as a letter is, or a simple shape that you can't. And think about how complex the square and compass is. Right, it's not just a simple shape. It's not even just a word or a phrase. It's two objects and a letter put together in a very specific way that nobody can own. That's crazy.
So that was going to be my next question. Was the argument just based on the square and the compass, or the square, the compass, and the G?
Well,
I don't remember what your distinction specifically it was.
You know what I mean?
I think they meant in general the square and compass, like however it was being used, but still, it's not trademarkable in any way.
You've trademarked symbols before. What is the process of trademarking a symbol? You have to usually have a description.
Yeah.
It's got to be unique, I'm assuming.
It's got to be unique. And then, so one thing I didn't know was they look at that logo or symbol in the area that you're applying for it. So, like, if somebody has the symbol and they trademarked it under a carpentry business and you want to go use it for a media company, generally they'll allow it because it's not the same
It's not
industry.
stepping on each other.
Right.
It'll make sense.
Yeah. But then after that, it's all just basically filing the paperwork and having lawyers do it.
Right, but that goes to my point is there's no way that, and this was like a clandestine. That was the whole thing. It was like a clandestine Grand Lodge was being sued by, I think, a regular Grand Lodge, and they said there's nobody that can own this. Like, it's just there, you know.
That's pretty interesting.
You know, I almost wanted to say, because it's around the world too. You know, like, how would it work? Would you say Grand Lodge of England is going to be like, we're going to trademark this Grand Compass, and then we will license it for $1
Also,
to every regular Grand Lodge, like $1 a year. You know, like like it's. I don't even know how it would work. You know, but it is kind of cool to say that. Even though it causes problems, but we're able to kind of check our own you know, regularity.
Mm-hmm.
But it is kind of cool to know that the symbol is so widely out there that no one is able to own it. It's just like the letter D.
One of the very few
can't,
things
no,
in the world.
No one could own that. Right. It's so common. It's not. I don't want to say common, but it's just been for so long. It's like a patent. Like, it's just like nobody owns the patent for shoelaces.
No,
they've just been there for so long that nobody owns that anymore. It's just it's a part of life.
The other thing too is you have the Grand Lodge of England, 1717. You have the square and compass on things that predate. So for you to lay claim to a symbol that predates your organization, recognize Masonry. That's hard in itself.
That's what I'm saying. It's as old as the alphabet. No, it's not as old. It's old, but
you're laying claim to something that you didn't create.
Right.
You're laying claim to something that predates you by centuries.
Right.
You know.
And even then, how do you draw true lineage all the way back? There's even our records are limited on how far back, and we go back pretty far in the Grand Lodge of New York and just the United Grand Lodge of England. And
about how far back do we go roughly?
I mean, the oh God, I'm drawing a blank right now.
Like
the Regis manuscript.
13,
the Regis manuscript, I think, was like the 14.
Wow.
14 or 1500s.
I think it predates that.
I know I'm gonna probably get heat for it.
The problem is Masonry has.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Masonry has literally been timeless. The problem is when you went from country to country or jurisdiction to jurisdictions before that, the teachings of Masonry varied so much that when you got the Grand Lodges of England, France, and Scotland together, there was an attempt to create some type of uniformity to it.
Okay.
And that's why you have modern day Masonry. You know, it's like the game of baseball. The MLB plays it this way.
Yeah.
But you go to the park in Brooklyn and like, no, that doesn't mean that. You know, tag it up, no leading. You know, there's different little things.
Give me that ball.
Exactly.
Give me that bat. Here's a stick.
Yeah. So
we call it stick ball.
It's the same thing. Flag football versus real football.
Mm-hmm.
NFL or soccer. You know, it's the uniformity of it.
1425.
Is it 1425? Wow. I thought it was earlier than that.
But it has to do with masonry in the year. The document relates to how craft masonry is brought to England during the reign of King Athelstan at 924 to 939. So it's a 1400s document that's talking about masonry as far back as the 900s or whatever.
That's
first
crazy.
century.
Yeah.
Like craft masonry, what we would consider like.
You said
as craft.
1425 or something.
Yeah.
Like that? What was that?
Before Columbus
I
sailed the
was
ocean
just
blue.
gonna say that.
1492.
Yeah.
Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
That's wild.
What was the name of his ships?
Oh, I know this.
Oh, come
One of them
on.
was
The
the
name of the
Titanic.
Pinta de Santa Maria.
There you go.
Do you know they
Let's
say
see
the
it.
Titanic never sunk?
I heard that.
Oh God.
No,
We're
no,
going
no.
into-
It's
no, no.
conspiracy theorists. Throw them out of masonry.
Do you remember? So you're Italian, right, Jimmy?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember? Did your parents or grandparents sing the Columbus song?
Which one?
In 1492, 3 ships set out to sea: the Nina and the Pinta and the Santa Maria, and way up in the crow's nest. I can't remember the rest of it. Way up in the crow's
What
nest,
is-
you hear
yeah.
Luigi say, "Hey, Mr. Columbus, turn the ship around. I want to feel my 2 feet on the ground. Oh, why you tell Isabella that the world is round? Hey, Mr. Columbus, turn the ship around."
Dude, I
So
haven't heard
stupid.
that song in years.
Right?
Oh my goodness.
I don't know what they said. That stupid stuff just sticks in my head. I don't know why that
As it
was stuck
should.
in my head.
As it should.
I'm sure I messed it up a little bit, but that's I remember that from my childhood. That's the reason I remember the name of those 3 ships.
Yeah. But we'll talk about the Titanic.
Those
in
were
a
Oh
minute.
yeah,
Templar-
no, I
those
want to
were-
hear about the Titanic
Those were
now.
Templar
So-
ships, right?
So what's that?
Those were Templar ships.
I mean, I'm pretty sure they were. I mean, just in my opinion, I think there was.
They said Christopher Columbus's wife was the daughter of a high-ranking Templar.
Could have been. I mean, he was alive around the same time. You know,
It's possible. It's very
it's
possible.
1400s, man. The Templars are still, you know, when was Jacques de Molay killed?
I know it was Friday 13th. That's all I know. It's documented.
It was around that time. If it was either right before or right after, they were still around. Whether they were officially Knights Templar, or
Yeah.
there was people around. But let's hear about this Titanic thing. I've got to hear
So-
this ridiculous conspiracy
So
theory.
no. It's not that the Titanic didn't sink. A boat sunk. It just wasn't the one that was built as the Titanic. There were 2 almost identical ships, the
Mhm.
Titanic and the Britannica.
Mm-hmm.
And they-
1314.
Okay.
Okay.
So there was an issue with the Britannica.
Okay.
So what they apparently say is they took the nameplates off, swapped the nameplates, made adjustments, and then they sunk the Britannica for the insurance money because it was already a problem
With
ship.
people on it.
Yeah, bro.
I mean,
All J.P. Morgan's
But why?
competitors.
But then where did the Titanic go? It became the
it was
Britannica.
the Britannica.
Oh,
Correct.
switcheroo.
So they still had a perfectly good ship. Otherwise, if the Titanic sunk, they would have had a good ship that sunk and then still had the damaged ship, the Britannica. So they
If
sunk
you-
the Britannica.
If you look at how world economics changed during that time,
but the Titanic's not here.
No, but the Britannica was. Basically, they swapped the nameplates.
So the Titanic was. I'm confused now.
The Britannica sunk.
Right.
They took the welded nameplates off of the 2 ships and swapped them.
So the Britannica that existed was really the Titanic.
Correct. That's the theory. Not saying I believe it.
But there was people on it.
But oh yeah.
Okay, you're not going as crazy as
there
saying
was
like
people on it.
they fucking sunk this thing
No,
and there was
no.
nobody on the
They
damn
sunk
thing.
it. No. It sunk.
J.P.
People
Morgan
died.
sunk it.
There
Yeah,
is.
but didn't he die?
No,
No, there were people that were
I
supposed
thought
to be on the ship
I
that
thought he
didn't.
died though.
no.
Mm-mm.
I mean, he's not alive today, but he didn't die. He
I
didn't
would
die.
hope not. That'd be weird.
He didn't die in the Titanic.
Yeah. There's actually a couple famous people that
I'll
were
look it
supposed
up.
Do
to
you
be
want me
on
to go
the
get my
fact check
tinfoil hat?
I'll
Tinfoil
fact
hat
check
for
it.
Jimmy.
Hold on.
I have my tinfoil hat.
I love it.
J.P. Morgan.
And Chase.
Oh, I like the Astors
Middle name
and stuff
Chase?
were like that.
The what?
The Astors, I think went down on the Titanic.
Like
J.P.
Astor
Morgan
Place
did
in
not
Manhattan?
sink the Titanic to push forward plans. Hold on.
Oh God, here we go. Down into the rabbit hole we go.
Corrected fact check. J.P. Morgan did not sink the Titanic to push forward plans for the U.S. Federal Reserve.
Oh, that's right. Apparently, some of his competitors
Yeah, the
were,
Astors and
were
stuff.
on the Titanic.
Oh God.
Yeah.
It gets deep. No pun intended.
Especially look. Listen.
Why do you always look dead?
Who?
You.
Me?
Like you look like
It's
you have
your
like no
camera.
skin tone. It's not the
Sorry.
camera.
I hydrate. So, just remember, ladies and gentlemen.
It's the same lens. It's pointed at me.
What do you mean? No, it's not.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but you have, I don't know. Maybe you have more melanin than me.
It's the blue light behind the chair. That's
It's
making
gotta
it
be.
pale.
It's gotta be. This has got purple here. It's bouncing off of there, looking at me. Professionals made the Titanic. Amateurs made the Ark.
This
Remember that.
this episode has gone completely off the rails.
This is
by the
after
way.
hours.
This is not even an episode
So,
at this point.
I have
This
a
is
question
the after
for you.
hours with Jimmy.
Just Jimmy.
I have a question.
It's definitely the purple light.
If somebody has somebody, let's say,
Keep talking. I'm listening.
let's say you're not a Mason, but your uncle died and he was a Mason, and you wanted to find out more about his involvement in Masonry, could you, or would you have to become a Mason to find it out?
No, you could. No. You would reach out to the Grand Lodge or the lodge that he belonged to if you knew that, and you'd be able to find out membership, years.
Positions?
If you're that crazy, you could look through it's the light back here. I'm telling you. You'd be able to find out years. If you became a member, I'm sure you could look through the minutes and find out, on the sickness and the stress. Somebody mentioned them.
Yeah, because my uncle in Florida, my grandfather's brother, he was a Mason.
Mhm.
So I'd like to try and find.
Do you know what lodge?
No, that's
So you
the
could
thing.
call the Grand Lodge of Florida, and they'd be able to find him.
Okay, that's good to know.
And they could
'Cause I've
point
always
you out to
been-
the lodge, and then you can even affiliate with them.
Yeah, because I'm always curious as to how far he took it, or how far he went in Masonry.
Yes.
Let me try to get this thing.
What?
Let's try to get this thing back on the rails.
All right, I'd like to do.
Jimmy, symbol that you like. Give me one. I want to hear something. Have you found a symbol, being a newly raised brother, that you can use day to day?
Or a working tool.
Oh, yeah, working tool that you enjoy using. And if you haven't put any thought into it, that's fine too.
I mean, the square,
Mm-hmm.
just because it's a perfect square. No, it's a perfect working tool to use in your everyday life.
How so?
Well, square your actions. You always want to make sure that your actions are aligned with your morals and your ethics. The other symbol I do like is, and I forget the name of it, the circle with the center with the two lines on the outside.
Yeah, the circumpunct.
Yes.
And the I
Yeah.
mean it's an iteration basically of what the compasses are used for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are the
Point within a circle.
two symbols that I kind of, at this moment, like the most,
Mm-hmm.
because it's being new in Masonry. It's easy for me to assimilate those into my own life.
Now, how do you interpret certain symbols? Like we were talking earlier, me and Matt, and we were saying how, I was saying how I don't like when Masonic documents written by authors who Masonry obviously predates them speak in absolutes. This means that. This means this. This means that. As opposed to this is what I interpret it to mean, right? So how do you interpret the square into your daily lives without using that definition? Can I give you an example?
I have to think about it, of course.
So like the square being, it's always going to be what it is. It's always an angle of 90 degrees. Versus the compass can change. It bends.
Yeah, so I mean,
Or it doesn't bend, it adjusts.
yeah, I picked up what you were getting at, but no, yeah. So your morals and your ethics are kind of like the square. They should be unwavering. They should be your foundation, and then the compass kind of allows you to adjust and make incremental changes on how you go about life,
This guy's good.
but still maintaining the morals and ethics
And
that you believe in.
What's the center of all things? And if you encompass the square with a G in the middle.
I don't know how much I could say, but
I mean, it's interpretation. Nothing's absolute, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, some people interpret the G to stand for God. Some people geometry. Others, I believe, an architect. So there are a couple different things that G could stand for.
Right.
I like to kind of take the G out of it
Yeah.
and just the square on the compass.
Sometimes it's an eye, the all-seeing eye.
Yeah.
But it goes into not taking everything for face value. That's what I like about Masonry and a lot of times Masonic documents, where it breeds thinking as opposed to receiving, right? It teaches, it doesn't instruct. It teaches you how to learn, not what to learn.
Correct.
And I think that's the beauty in Masonry altogether. Mine is the beehive.
I mean, my thoughts on the beehive. I love that symbol.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite symbols.
It's definitely my favorite.
It's on my past master's apron for a reason. It's like I love that symbol. It's hard to. I mean, it's hard to constantly be using it. It's hard to constantly be reminded of it because you get tired and you're like, oh, I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to do anything, But to know that if you don't stay busy, and for Masonry too, it could be for your life, but if you're not constantly moving, you're
industrious.
You're not being industrious. You're just waiting. You're just dying.
Well, that's I said it earlier. I have notes here that I wanted to touch on, but age, like you said, dying. Aging is the aggressive pursuit to comfort, not doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's stagnant. That's what idle hands are the devil's playground. It's always, you should always strive to be industrious.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the other things is as you get older, you have to reinvent yourself. So one of the things that I kind of is my square is, one of the sayings is, who would you be if what you did well you couldn't do anymore? Like, God forbid you were paralyzed. Would people still want to sit next to you? Would you be some grumpy guy? Like, what is your character your main asset in life, or is what you do for a living your main asset in life? Why people hang around you?
Yeah. The beehive also reminds me of just having to work as a team also, that it's not just on one person, so whether it's the lodge or whether it's in life with society, you have to be contributing in whatever way you're supposed to be contributing, otherwise it all
How's
falls
that
apart.
defined? Because that's almost like, at that point, right, absence of leadership creates more leadership, but you have to have an authority that enforces the system, right? Because in the Masonic Lodge, the rules and roles are defined. And if you undertake this position, that is your job. The authority enforces, this is your job, here's your list, right? And the absence of leadership eventually will create a leader, because, what do you think about that theory?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like if there's a lack of effort of one or a few, then nobody gets to enjoy the honey. It's all incumbent on everybody. It's not on one person. That's what I like about the beehive. It's not supposed to be one person makes the honey. You can't enjoy the honey at all if everybody's not doing their job. And it could be, bees all don't do the same job. They all have different jobs to do. So why not find the job that you like to do and do it well, and you contribute in a way that we can all enjoy the honey, and the honey in Masonry being a thriving lodge that's fun for you, fun for your family, good for your community. That's the honey of Masonry, and good for you in whether or not you're physically there or spiritually there, or however you enjoy, taking Masonry in, that's the honey of Masonry.
So now,
whether it's what you would enjoy out of Masonry, whether it's charity, whether it's just family, whether it's fellowship, whether it's esoteric stuff.
So how do you create that desired outcome? What is the basis of Masonry? And this is something we speak on that I found out as being master this year. because we come into Masonry for different reasons. You come into different reasons. How do we get the hive to function where the created outcome is that? Like, what is it? Is it esotericism? Is it philosophy? Is it camaraderie, fellowship? What creates that?
Well, it's the fact that you have to have all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. For me, it's like you can't just be It can't be a one-trick pony in the lodges, and I feel like some lodges kind of get lost in that sometimes, where they're like, all we do here is charitable work. All we do here is throw parties. All we do here is talk deep stuff. Because what happens is you end up kind of not ostracizing, but like kind of like
creating an identity almost, right?
Well, you can have an identity. Like every lodge has got like, this is what they do really well. Like that's what they're known for. But like, if you don't have all of the facets necessary that Masonry is supposed to be creating, like the honey is all of those things. It's esoteric stuff. It's fellowship. It's family things. It's charity. Okay, it's supposed to be all of them. Otherwise, you don't have the honey of Masonry. And what happens is if someone wants to join Masonry for charity and that lodge doesn't provide that, they're either going to go to another lodge or they're just not going to join Masonry, because maybe that lodge is the only one. Like New York is a bad example, especially like Long Island. Mm-hmm. We very high densification of lodges. Like in reality, if you're drawing linear distance to lodges, like we have one right. There's one in Amityville, and we're in Babylon.
Yeah,
we're like what, 3 miles, 2 miles away from each other.
Yeah,
so, that's close. With other parts of the country, you're talking, you could be like an hour and a half away from another lodge. So that might be their only option.
Yep.
Like on Long Island, you might have another option, but even then, like what if Amityville doesn't have? They do charity, like every lodge does charity, but like, what if like you're like, yeah, I just want to do like big charity events. But the lodge doesn't have their heart in it to do like huge charity events, and that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And
I think fellowship should be excluded from what you mentioned. As far as what I think fellowship is, the foundation, it's the mortar. I think it's the honey is the fellowship, because you have to want to be around brothers to achieve the esoteric, the charity, all of those things. So I think.
Well, I mean fellowship let's be honest. The fellowship in the, I want to hang out with the guys. That's what I mean. The fellowship of, I just want, obviously doesn't cause issues at home and none of that stuff, but I just want a place to go hang out with the guys. And, all the other stuff I enjoy, but like, that's what I really am like looking to do, like go out, have a cigar or whatever it is. Some lodges don't do that at all.
That's why I think lodges, you get kind of lost in the sauce where our identity is, the charitable work or this or that. I think if more lodges focus just on the fellowship aspect, getting to know its members, something simple as when you're downstairs having a meal, situating the chairs in a certain way where you don't have pockets of guys just be feeling excluded. You create, back to the first episode, open space sometimes is harmful for the greater whole. You create, a group where, all right, the car guys are over here and the guys who like to do charity over here, and the lodge never feels like one. Brother Ian always speaks on, during lodge, they'll recognize a brother that hasn't been around in a while and say, hey, how was your weekend? What'd you do? And now, I was out fishing. And now everybody knows.
Yeah. And
I had one of the brothers come up to me last meeting, and he said, we should do trivia on the brothers. And we'll have a trivia game. And how well do brothers in your lodge actually know you?
Mm-hmm.
And build those exercises that breed that fellowship.
We've said it. Oh God, I'm gonna mess it up, and we've said it a million times. We should be building what? You remember what I've said? We should be building friendships, not acquaintances.
Oh yeah.
And I can't say that enough. Like taking the time to get to really know each other. I know it's difficult. I know like the world's crazy. Like you're busy with everybody. But it goes back to what we said about like the open concept type places. Like at some point, you need to force everybody into that room or that table and get them around each other. You have to spend that physical time around other people to get to know them. That's what I mean. We're blessed. We have a beautiful, like, very large lodge room, but we could have 50 guys in that room and it looks like there's 10 people in it.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Like, I've been in lodges where I almost prefer the fact that it's like you're smashed in there, and everyone's on top of each other,
It's intimate.
It's more intimate, I think with, the ritual and everything, I mean, if we had 200 people in our room, then you would feel stuck. I mean, and there are a lot of advantages to having a room our size, just being able to do the floor work correctly, like there's plenty of room to do all that,
I mean, you once you start doing stuff like that, you get brothers like-minded. You can move as a greater whole with this guy's, interest or that guy's interest. Whether it's, let's build a playground for underprivileged kids, like Brother Joe does, or helps fund doing charitable works, or going to a Yankee game, going to the Grand Lodge, or anything for that matter. But that's how a lodge is able to move in unison with each other. When you have like-minded guys, but you have to know what this guy's mind is like.
Well, so that's where the fellowship comes in,
right?
Because the fellowship, I think, helps with like brother retention, if that makes sense. Because if the lodge knows what the brothers are coming to the lodge for, then they can start to do those things to fulfill the need they're looking for.
Yeah.
So if a brother likes to do charitable work, well, then the lodge knows, okay, let's try and set up some charitable work so that he feels fulfilled in masonry.
And the lodge also embodies a little bit of his morals and values.
Yeah.
So you're decorating the environment with your interests. Everybody wants to be able to leave a legacy or carbon footprint. What better way to do it than in lodge?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even something as putting park benches across the street.
Yeah. So my question, because I want to create a segue for us to end this episode and go into a next episode, is at what point do you become overindulgent in masonry? Because there has to be a point, right? And the question I'm going to pose to you is to think about this. Concordant bodies in masonry in the 21st century, and we can only speak of masonry in the 21st century in really, I would say, a New York, tri-state, hustle and bustle type area, which a lot of people live in. And I feel like masonry is strong in other parts of the country, but there's a lot less population there. We should have a lot more Masons in these more densely populated areas. But we're in the rat race a lot more than everybody. So does masonry do a good job of preventing overindulgence in masonry and making it more accessible, because it's asking a smidge less from brothers, from how many times you meet, how long meetings are, and how many concordant bodies there are?
I think.
And at what point does masonry try to explain to brothers or adjust how they do things to bring in new brothers, or to make it easier on the brothers that are really going to be the meat and potatoes of it? Like our older retired brethren, they have time, they're retired, but masonry isn't adding younger people because it hasn't adjusted to make it. You don't want to make it completely catered to them, because masonry is important, and it's important what it is doing and the way it does it for the older brothers. But should it pivot slightly?
I'm a firm, but I'm traditionalist when it comes to a lot of things.
That's it. More like a yes or no. Do you think masonry? Because we'll move on into the next episode, but I want you to keep that in mind. Is masonry?
No.
It's not. Has it been able to adjust itself, or should it adjust itself for a 21st century Mason living in an area like the area we live in, which is more of a
I think Masonry did at one point adjust, and we're dealing with the over adjustment now.
Okay.
So I don't think it does a good enough job
Of adjusting.
I think it over adjusted.
Okay. And we'll get into why
Right.
then at the next episode. But Jimmy, thanks for you're going to join us on the next one. I
Absolutely.
hope. And thank you all for tuning in and safe travels.